Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a new Smart Cookies again. I'm really sorry, as you can hear, I've got a bit of a man flu, and I might be coughing, so I'm really sorry. I try to mute my microphone every time, but if you see me coughing, sorry about that. So today we are welcoming Iain Blair. Iain Blair is the founder of a company called Revoco, which is one of the nice recruitment companies. Like they are some of them, and they're actually pretty good. So Iain today is going to talk to us about the good, the bad, and the ugly in recruitment. As you know, as a founder of Cookies, I've been recruiting now for about 10 years. And I'm pretty sure he's going to share a lot of mistakes that I will have done in the past. So I hope you will listen carefully and not do the same mistake as we did in Cookies, because there can be sometimes costly mistakes when you recruit, but I guess everyone goes through them. Iain, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Better than you by the sound of it.
Yeah, it's a bit rough. I've been tested negative, so I'm all fine.
Very good.
I went to a PCR test thing, and it was really bizarre. You have to call them like you're in the car, but you have to use a phone, and the guy's talking to you just here.
Yeah.
Like it was feeling extremely bizarre. But
well, I did two of my children this morning, got their natural flow tests before they were sent back to school, both negative. So that's all good.
Yeah. All right. So Iain, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute my mic, and exceptionally, I'm also going to turn my video off, just so
sure
me using those basically.
Yeah, please do that. That'd be nice.
And everybody, we're going to have a 20 minutes talk and then a 10 minutes Q&A basically as usual. Please ask your questions inside the chat. In the chat, you got a little toggle. So if you can move your chat to panelists and attendees so we can all see your questions. We may not answer your questions as the talk goes, but we'll just select questions towards the end and answer them in the last 10 minutes. Iain, the stage is all on for you.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. Screen 2. Share. And whilst that's loading up, just obviously want to thank Cookies very much for inviting me on. It's a broad topic, isn't it? It's a huge topic. Let me just, I should have gone into that mode by now. There we go. Yeah, what a huge topic in terms of tech talent and hiring tech talent. And what you'll probably learn, hopefully, throughout this next 20 minutes or so is that there isn't a silver bullet. But what I've wanted to try and do, if I just move this on, is give you a bit of an introduction. The bottom right-hand side of this slide will show you how challenging it has been for a number of years. I've been doing this for now 26 years. Started my career in IT recruitment back in 1995. And you can see the kind of trend that we've had across the numbers of vacancies and available talent has only been going one way for a very long time. What's going to be really interesting, of course, is what this looks like during 2020. We know that the number of vacancies will have dramatically dropped, but only for a very, very short period of time. The tech talent acquisition market has not been dramatically hit by the pandemic. We had a good 4 or 5 months of obviously panic stations, but really it has recovered far quickly than most other industries. So be very interested to see what that does. So again, thank you very much for having me on. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. Hiring tech talent. I'm going to talk you through what your options are. So if you're in a business at the moment and you do have 1 or 2 roles or even multiple roles, you have various different options available to you. So I'm going to talk to you about what those options are, and also how to get the best out of those options. So that's where the do's and don'ts come in, and hopefully that can help shed some light. And then finally, I'm going to wrap up with hopefully some clear kind of hints and tips of how to maximize your success. There isn't a silver bullet in tech recruitment. There's not one thing you can do. There's lots and lots and lots of things. So hopefully we can cover some of that through the session. So what are your options? Well, you're in your business. You've got some tech hiring you need to do. Obviously, one of your first options is to engage with an agency. I'm going to talk through that in a second. You can obviously try and do it yourself, which we call the direct model. So having your own internal talent team. You could actually do a bit of both. So you could have an internal talent team that does certain roles, but you still engage with agencies for more niche positions, or you could potentially outsource all of your hiring and recruitment to a business that know what they're doing. And I'll explore that in a little bit detail too. So let's first and foremost have a look at the different models. But one thing I do want to tell you, and I'm sorry to be blunt if you don't know this already, but I'm sure you do. However you do it, it's going to cost money. Okay, and I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that if you do it yourself, it's going to be considerably cheaper. It will be in the long run if you get it right, but not in the short term. And also, people don't necessarily factor in all the things that you need to do tech talent successfully well. So unfortunately, it is going to cost you money. Very difficult to tell you exactly what it's going to cost you. Glassdoor currently puts the cost per hire in the UK of about £3 to £3,500, but that's across all areas, all markets, all sectors. That's not just tech. I think you can probably double that for tech hiring. But if you look at other methods of measuring cost per hire, some accountancy firms reckon the figure is more closer to £12,000, because if you factor in the amount of time it takes to hire people and all the different things you've got to do, they come up with that figure. So bit of a wide range there. I think I can tell you with my experience and my background, having run multiple large scale RPOs, recruitment process outsourcing businesses, that the cost per hire figure does normally get down to about 3 to 3.5K per hire. But again, that's across volume. Okay, so whatever you do, it's going to cost money. Human capital is your biggest line in your P&L. I can absolutely guarantee that. So we shouldn't be a big surprise that recruiting that talent is also going to be a big cost. So, but what can we do? So using an agency, again, apologies, I don't really know, obviously, the audience, so I don't know how much experience you've got in recruitment or whether you're a complete novice or new into it. So I'm going to have to try and cover all bases. So I'm just going to sort of talk you through some do's and don'ts, I think. But we've probably all been there and we may have all seen it. So you've briefed an agency and before you know it, your inbox is looking something like that. You're just getting loads and loads and loads and loads of CVs really quickly, bang, 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 bang. And who's doing all the work when that happens? It's definitely not the agency. Or it's the opposite. You brief out a role and then nothing, tumbleweed, silence. Okay. Unfortunately, it can often be one or those two things. And then, of course, you may have experienced the amazing looking CV, bringing them in for an interview or doing a virtual interview as we are today, and it's just a disaster and you want to walk out within 3 seconds. I'm sure you've all experienced that at some point. And then finally, you get the invoice. You open the invoice when they've made the placement and you're like, whoa, what is going on here? So if any of that resonates with you, any of those stupid gifts that I've put up, then hopefully I'm going to try and improve that, basically. So let's have a look at some do's and don'ts of working with an agencies. Move that out the way because it's blocking my view. Right. So first and foremost, I know it sounds really obvious, but this engagement, the engagement you have with your partner is so critical. Do you have a think about the engagement you have with current suppliers, current IT recruitment suppliers or recruitment suppliers? Do you enjoy the conversations? Do you enjoy the meetings? Do you actually look forward to talking to them about your next recruitment challenge? Or is it just a massive dread? Because if it is a massive dread and you don't enjoy the conversations and you don't get the value, then you haven't got the right engagement and you need to probably find a new supplier. It's as simple as that, really. The other big telltale sign for me is this job qualification. It may surprise you to know that if I take a job qualification or someone in my business, Revoco, takes a job qualification, we'll be on the phone for a minimum of 30 minutes, probably closer to 45 minutes. Okay. If I'm talking to anyone, obviously, in the tech world, which I probably are, there's no different in when you're gathering new requirements to build a new system or build a new app. You're not going to do that off the back of a fag packet and do it in 5 minutes. it's the same for us. We have to really understand everything about your business, your organization, the role, the purpose of the role, the growth of the role, the prospects available, the technical ins and outs of the position, where it fits in the grand scheme of things. And only then can we represent it properly and find you the right people. So please bear that in mind. If you're sending a job description out and the agency you're working with is happy to work off it, or has had a quick 5-minute chat, do they really know what they're doing? I'd question they probably don't. Which then links onto this point. These organizations are representing your brand in a highly competitive market. Are you happy with that? Are you happy with the way they're going to represent your brand? Just think very carefully about that too. Okay, and then trust goes without saying in any supplier relationship, doesn't it? But do you believe what they're telling you? Do you understand the risks of what they're trying to do for you? Do you believe in what they're telling you around the market and the availability of talent and the salaries and everything else? Because if you don't, that's not a great relationship. Clearly, you need to be able to trust your supplier, and this comes back to the job qualification. Actually, if you think about it, if during that conversation you're gaining their trust and you're really understanding that they know what they're talking about, the knowledge is shining through, then you know that you're in safe hands. If it's a quick wham bam, then it's the exact opposite. And then finally, really do some due diligence on your recruitment partners. Ask them questions about what else do they do, what other value added services do they provide, how have they innovated over the last 2 years or last year or last 6 months. Unfortunately, our industry, the recruitment industry, is very polarized. We have some amazingly good recruitment businesses who will do all the things I've just talked about, but we still have a vast majority of businesses who still operate in a certain way. It's a numbers game, it's a KPI game, it's throw the CVs out and see if they stick. Highly verticalized, which means the experience you can get is sometimes not great. So ask them, go in deep about them and their business and how they work, how they're set up. And then on the other side, some don'ts. Just avoid when you're working with agencies. Don't keep them at arm's length. It's linked to everything I've just said. If you keep them at arm's length, then it's probably because you're not enjoying the relationship and you don't have the trust and you don't have the engagement, and it's a downward spiral if that's the case. I would say this, wouldn't I, as an MD and owner of a recruitment business, but you can definitely negotiate too hard. You can be very unattractive as a client, and unfortunately, recruiters can be weak to tell you that. They'll just agree, but then if they have other roles on that are a better quality of business and a higher fee, you know where their effort and attention is going to go. So just be really mindful on the fee itself. Okay. And then finally, put them into a race. This is just such a huge point, and something that really lots and lots of my clients over the years just haven't really understood. And I'm going to go into it in a bit more detail if I can, but recruitment's a funny old game. And if you're working with someone who you trust and that knows your market and has the talent pools that you're looking for, it really is very wise to leave that with them. Don't put it out to 2 or 3 other suppliers at the same time. All that does is it creates a race scenario where the suppliers have to get their CVs in your inbox first. So what they do is the quality goes out the window because they have to move quickly. They can't do their job properly. So I urge you just to think about that. Exclusivity isn't a dirty word, and it isn't locking you down forever. In fact, often we will suggest to a client, leave it with us for a week. And then if you feel like we're making good progress and the engagement's there over that week, then we might buy ourselves another week. Okay. But don't think you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Just give it a go. Trust me, you'll probably find it extremely different. And then a bit of an obvious one here, but clearly the engagement goes both ways. If they're asking you questions and they're asking you about whatever it might be, a question they forgot to ask in the job qualification, or they're looking for feedback on a CV, the more you don't go back to them and the more you ignore them and the more you're not responsive, the lower down the pecking order you'll become, because at the end of the day, they only get paid when they're successful. So I know it sounds obvious, but unfortunately I do still see it. I called this the good, the bad and the ugly. Well, there are some traps that you do need to be aware of. There are still some businesses that have some horrible business practices, which I don't condone in any way, but it still happens. If a CV has been specced into you for one of the really hard to fill roles, whether it's software engineer or a DevOps engineer, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Okay, they're luring you in, and unfortunately, they'll go as far as making up a candidate, getting your commitment to see that candidate. The candidate doesn't exist, and whilst you book that candidate in, oh, funnily enough, they've pulled out, but they've got another CV for you to look at. It's a horrible tactic, but unfortunately, it does still go on. Any questions on that later on, I'm sure we can talk about. And then the PSL, PSL, preferred supplier list, or ASL, approved supplier list. I put really a bit sarcastically, it's been proven year after year by the staffing industry analysts that the PSL is the most frequently used model in recruitment, but it's also in the same breath been evaluated as the least efficient. Okay, so it's the most commonly used, but it's the least efficient. And that's because of everything I've just told you around putting people into a race scenario, not having that relationship, that close relationship and that trust. So just bear that in mind. What you can do, of course, is have an approved supplier list across lots of different areas. So you have a marketing specialist, an HR specialist, and a technology specialist. And you might even have a technology specialist within different areas. So someone who's doing DevOps, someone who's very good at software engineering, etc., someone with product. So that's okay, but just don't put one role out to multiple suppliers. Try it. So hopefully that's some do's and don'ts of how to work and get the best out of agencies. And then there is the do-it-yourself model. I mean, really difficult to know where to start here. But what I can do again is kind of just give you a few do's and don'ts of things that I see in the market. So first and foremost, have a strategy. I know it sounds really obvious, but talent acquisition is not something you can wing. Okay, if you're hiring volume and you're hiring numbers of technology people, it is tough. You need a strategy, and I'm going to come on to that in a little bit more detail. Be realistic. I see it time and time again. Clients looking for an on-site recruiter, and they list out the job description of what this recruiter's doing, and actually what they're doing is listing out about 4 different people's jobs. Okay, it's no different. You wouldn't, in your Scrum team, expect your product owner to be able to code, or your software engineer to be able to elicit, sort of requirements at the highest level within tough stakeholders. It's just they're different roles. So bear that in mind. Sourcing is a skill. Finding tech talent across multiple platforms and building talent pools is a skill, but it isn't the same skill as someone who's going to help you with your end-to-end strategy, your employer value proposition. Okay, so please bear that in mind when you're looking for your internal team and your internal talent. And be patient. It's going to take time. Whoever you hire in is going to have to start from scratch. You don't have existing talent pools necessarily, so they have to build them up. So it will take time, and just be patient on that, and it will come. Be balanced. So track all the metrics. Okay, time per hire, cost per hire, your quality of hire. But also you should be looking at your candidate journey, getting feedback on that and improving it. You obviously your D&I data, all of these areas you need to measure. Can't improve if you don't measure. And then some don'ts. Pretty obvious. Don't expect results overnight, as I've said. Don't set unrealistic direct hiring targets. This is something you get in the sort of larger enterprises where there are direct sourcing teams, and they're obsessed with the direct hiring metric, but actually the business is concerned that it takes 6 months to hire someone. Okay, well, what's the true cost of not having that person in that job delivering the business value? It's massive. I work with a big high street retailer, cover all their tech department, and the cost of not having that product owner in and developing and moving that application forward is costing them millions of pounds a week. So why are we obsessed with that direct hiring target if it's taking too slow? Things like that. And again, sounds obvious, but you can't expect a recruiter to come in and land in a seat and then just get on with it. It's like any tradesman. They need the tools to do the job. Okay, they need the LinkedIn licenses. They need the job boards access. They need the Slack. They need all the things you need to do to source. So all of those things do cost money, the advertising, etc. It all costs money and it all adds up. So don't think your cost of doing it yourself is a body. And then, of course, there is the recruitment strategy itself. So I can't go into this in huge detail now because we just don't have time. But these are just some of the things that you need to think about, okay, across how to be successful in tech talent. Some of these words I'm sure you're very familiar with. Your onboarding, your pre-boarding, but your sourcing itself is a very complex thing. Got to put all this together. Does your company have the right EVP? Is it well communicated across all channels? Do you have a social media strategy? Do you have a content plan that then the social media strategy uses to push out that content to the relevant talent pools, etc., etc.? Your events, your meetups. I can go on, but it's a lot of things to consider. And then I'm going to touch on this model really quickly because for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. If I was doing this day in, day out, I probably would have a hybrid model. I would have a internal team who would be doing some of maybe the higher volume recruitment, some of the low-hanging fruit, some of the non-specialist recruitment. Having them building out my brand and my careers page, and I'd be doing all of that. But I would still use, would still have to use partners as and when you need to for those hard to fill niche roles. Okay, and I can touch on that in a little bit more. But I do want to talk too about this emerging market. So everyone's probably aware of the outsource model, and everyone's aware of the recruitment process outsourcing world, so the RPO world. But there's a new emerging model that's been coming out recently. We have one. Revoco has a recruitment as a service model, our RAS model. So it's a subscription based. But there are some conflicting things about the RAS or subscription-based model. So what it should be is just that, a subscription to a service that you pay monthly for a period of time, probably a minimum of 3, maybe 6 months, where then there are no other fees involved. So it's a subscription model, no other placement fees, but it's more than just a body. You're not just getting a body, you should be getting a service, an all-encompassing service, which should help you build out your direct sourcing model, if that makes sense. What it isn't is a rent-a-recruiter model. There are plenty of rent-a-recruiter models out there, and that's fine if that's what you need, but a subscription model isn't that, if that makes sense. The rent-a-recruiter model works really well if you've already got an established internal team and you need to just bolster it up. But if you're building it from scratch, that's not the model for you. And then finally, and this one really gets on my goat, people talk about a subscription model, but actually it's still an agency fee with the same agency engagement. They're just spreading out the payment terms, and it could be, across 6 months or 12 months. Fine if that works for you as a business, but that isn't a subscription model. That's something completely different. So there may be some questions on that later on, which I'll hopefully happily answer. And then really closing off now, it's a bit of a whirlwind chat. It's 20 minutes in, bit of a checklist to maximize success. So I talked about the different models and how to engage with them, but let's look at some of the things that you need to do, in my opinion. So first and foremost, don't fake your EVP. Okay, your EVP, your employee value proposition, is why would someone come and work for you? What do they get, and what do you get back in return? Unfortunately, some businesses do exaggerate what it's like to work for them. Maybe they make themselves sound even better, or maybe they say they look for rock star developers, and then they hire a rock star developer, and within 6 weeks, the rock star developer realizes it isn't rock star work and they leave. A very, very costly mistake. So really be clear about what your employee value proposition is. Then you need to communicate it, but you need to communicate it consistently throughout the journey. So your EVP should start on that first reach out. We talked about how you have the relationship with the agency and how well they represent you in the market. That's the first port of contact often that a candidate will have heard of your business or be aware that there is a requirement there. So that first reach out, to reading the job description, to looking on your careers page and watching the videos on your careers page, all of this has to be consistently around, the consistent message of what your EVP is. Often a job description's hammered together, sent out, it doesn't flow, it doesn't follow the rest of the EVP. Just be really mindful of that. Hopefully you know this already, but the interview process should absolutely be two-way. It is not a one-way exercise of you assessing the candidate. It needs to be they need to be able to assess you. They need to be able to ask loads of questions. Okay, so if you look at your interview process and it's very, very one way at the moment, change that and flip it over. It's a highly competitive market. So you've got to get your values and your purpose and all the things that you need to get across. This is an interesting one. Diversity is just a huge topic right now, D&I. But make sure that it's showcased. So if you have got a great, inclusive workforce, make sure it's showcased throughout the interview process. We had an incident literally only last week where a candidate was umming and ahhing between two organizations. One of them was our client, and he actually ended up not going for the client because he felt the other opportunity had slightly more of a diverse workforce. Unfortunately, our client then said, well, we do have a really diverse workforce, but because they didn't walk through the office and see that, and they only met me and my CTO and throughout the video interviewing process, they didn't get a sense of that. So that's just something to bear in mind on when you're planning who's doing the interviewing and what and why. And then this one, again, might sound really obvious, but look for reasons to hire people. Look for the attributes. We see it all the time. This software engineer must have 6 years experience, 6 years recruitment experience. What does 6 years mean in one business when 3 or 4 years in another business? You can't compare it like that. So, really kind of look for the attributes around it. They're very hard to find, some of these technical skills. So you do need to be open-minded about bringing people up on the journey. And we all know it's far easier to teach them skills than it is attributes, etc. And then streamline your process. So if it's taking too long, have a look at it. It should be short and sharp. It shouldn't be longer than probably 6 or 7 days in total. If it is, it's too long, especially within software engineers, DevOps engineers, these sort of skills. It's got to be uber quick and uber streamlined. And then finally, measure, analyze, and keep adjusting. Don't just measure the core metrics, cost per hire, time per hire, and quality of hire. Also measure your candidate journey, how successful it is, what your feedback is from the application through to interview stage, to onboarding, to pre-boarding, and keep measuring it, adjusting it, and everything else. So that is a whirlwind tour of recruiting in tech talent. I've left about 6 minutes for questions, so I hope that was okay.
Thank you so much. That was a very nice intro of your world. I mean, I have to admit, we have been guilty in the early days of cookies, of the whole, hang on, why would we pay a recruitment agency? The only thing they do is show CVs around. We're going to recruit ourselves. And the more we grow now, the more we actually understand that this is a skill in itself. Basically, recruiting is a skill in itself, and finding those people without being alienating, because you don't want to have your name of a company like with the wrong hand of a recruiter, basically, or the wrong recruiter's hand.
Yeah.
So it's a skill in itself, and yes, it costs money. Like, let's face it, and it's always bizarre to find that big bill all of a sudden, like you hiring someone and then you have a big bill. But the amount of time you save and the amount of mental energy you save through using like a recruitment agency,
as long as it's the right one.
As long as it's the right one, certainly. As long as it's the right one, and it's probably like, I guess when it's your first hire, you're probably less likely to use a recruitment agency. Like, you would try to do stuff yourself. But again, as you grow and as the team like moves around quite a lot, it's like I can see the traction. And it was, if you would have asked me like a few years ago, I would probably still bottling on and say, no, we can do it ourselves. Now it's like, no.
And there are definitely roles that you can do yourselves. As I said, I think that there really is. And but it for me, it's about that engagement. I think if like I had that humorous gif of the woman's face when she opened the invoice, if that's how you feel, then something's not right. So you shouldn't resent getting an invoice from an agency. You should feel like, okay, I know they've done that work, I know how much work they've done, we know how much we need this person. That's the key to me in all of this.
I think that's the way you need to see those bills now. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we've got a few questions. I just have one. Do like a recruitment agency use recruitment agency for their own recruitment?
Well, do you know what? We do.
Okay.
We do actually. So because of all the reasons I've said, we're so busy finding talent for our customers, we probably don't do enough talent pooling for us, okay, because it's a completely different market. Having said that, we have started to do that at Revoco. We started to do that considerably better recently. But yeah, we do, but not with massive amounts of success.
Fair enough. I guess I'm going to take the questions, and I think there's one. The first one was John was asking. It's interesting, the after sales option if things don't work out. I think typically, if I'm correct, the classic things is that as per contract you have like it's a ledger or a scale of like, if they stay for less than a week, then we reimburse the full cost, and then as the week goes on, you reimburse less and less on the bill, basically.
Yeah, you'll always have a rebate, or you should always have what's called a rebate in the terms and conditions. Often they are 8 weeks. At Revoco, we like to mirror our clients' probationary period, so we stretch it to 12 weeks. And it is a sliding scale, just as you described, Nick. But it is something you can always negotiate.
Yeah.
It's one of the points you can negotiate with an agency.
And the pros and cons of text test, I think on that one, if you allow me, I mean, we have changed a lot around the text test. So we never did the whole whiteboard text test because that's not something that we do consider valuable in cookies when we hire. But what we used to do for previous hires up to probably 2 years ago is that we had a rather long tech test, which would take typically a developer like about 5 days to complete, but we were paying the developers to take that test. So typically we do like a first round of interview, make sure that we had like the couple of right ones that we really wanted and we had a good chemistry with them. And then we give that very high level tech test, which was a building something altogether like a mini e-commerce basically by hand. But we would pay them to do these tests, and it was the right way. For us, it was like trying to test the communication, trying to test the tech skills, trying to test the commit messages, and yada. But what we found now is like in the world that we're evolving today, the recruitment goes such a fast pace. We don't have the time and the luxury to do that anymore. So we had to drop the whole tech test here that we now replace personally in cookies. We've now replaced it with a full day of pairing. So the people that goes through our second stage of interview, they would have a full day pairing with one of our developer working on a real life problem together. And then we can see how they think and how they engage.
Are they prepared to do a whole day?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. I mean, do you know, I was just going to say there is definitely a place for technical tests. There should be, but it's when you do them and it's how intensive they are and intrusive they are to the candidate. Because bearing in mind, if you're hiring a software engineer, I can be damn sure they're not just talking to you. They've probably got 5, 6, 7 other things on the go. That's 5 or 6, 7 other technical tests to do. But just quickly on tech tests, do it at the right part of the process. Too many businesses try and do it right up front. Okay, which obviously makes sense because they can rule them in or out if they're not technically strong enough. But if you don't get the buy-in first, if you haven't had the chance to sell what it's like to work at cookies or what the purpose is and actually get their buy-in, then why would they do a test that's going to take them hours at the weekend? So I would just factor that in. I would always put it second. So after an initial chat, get their buy-in, then maybe do the technical test.
Yeah, that's we typically do it like a second or third basically step in the process. Yeah, I guess it's that what you were saying is, as much as you want to see if if they are the right person, they also need to see if you are the right company for them basically. And it's even more true when you're an agency, because working in an agency is very much different than working on a product, and a lot of engineers do not realize sometimes that when they're moving from a product company to an agency, that their tech stack may be the exact same one, but the pace of work and the type of work is completely different. So that kind of like chemistry part of the first line is very important. We had one from James. So what recommendation can you give for increasing diversity while hiring?
It's a great question, James, and not to do a shameless plug, but I've got a webinar, Revoco, running a webinar on D&I. It's either going to be in 4 weeks' time or it'll be in May with a really great panel. But it's a huge topic, and there isn't a simple answer to it. But what I can tell you is just make sure that your job descriptions and your adverts are written in such a way that it can appeal to all audiences, not just white males. So, for example, obviously, if you list a technical job, a software development job, and you have 10 or 15 things listed as they need to do, men typically go, yeah, I can do all of that. Whereas females often get to the line 3 and go, I haven't really done that, and they'll move on. Okay, so it's little things like that, adjusting how you communicate that out. But my biggest thing, especially if you're a small business, is just be realistic about that, because the numbers just aren't great at the moment in terms of like females in tech, as an example. It's getting better. It's definitely getting better every year, but I think it is still as shocking as something like 11% within software engineering. I think that was the last Stack global report I read. So you need to be appealing to a broader audience. You need to be able to attend different meetups, really target those specific different niches that you are looking to try and or those more inclusive kind of talent pools that you're trying to dip into. But again, it's a huge topic and one that I'd love to talk about, but I don't think we've got too much time at the moment.
No, I think we got another couple of minutes, and I'm
Okay.
going to pass through very quickly through the 2 questions. So we got one from Laura, which I think can also be linked to the one from John. So John was asking if the impact of remote working on local salaries. So typically, how like a Bristol company hiring somebody from London, or more annoyingly, a London firm hiring somebody in Bristol. And I think that kind of matches well Laura's question, which is like, are UK's problem, the way we see UK's problem around recruitment, are they the same, or do they apply also in North America and Australia markets, basically? So I guess around salary, around culture, and around recruitment, how does that differ?
So from a salary point of view, we have literally noticed no difference yet. There's no difference. You're competing for that talent now, probably nationally, as you've just described, which does make it more difficult to compete against London-based salaries. But I will just say something about this globalization of talent, because when the pandemic hit and we all went to sort of remote working, for the first 3 to 6 months, it was felt that that's going to be a game changer for everyone. We can hire anywhere in the world. The honest truth is, a lot of my clients are now saying, but they do need to get to London. They do need to get to Bristol, even if it's once a month or once a quarter. So this globalization is probably a little bit far-fetched, if I'm honest. So we saw that, let's hire anywhere, and then it like shrunk down. And my own personal view, and it is only my personal view, is that we will end up doing some sort of hybrid model. We will still have offices. We still have innovation hubs. It's not going to be fully remote, because lots of people don't want that. They don't want to be fully remote. So I hope that answers your question. But from a salary point of view, we have not seen any changes in that at all across the UK.
All right, Iain, thank you very much. And Emily is going to send today a follow-up email with the link to your webinar in a few weeks, and then the link to this video that is going to be on our YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for doing your talk today. In about 2 weeks' time, we're going to have the Mr. Joe Litch, who's going to talk about making better decisions with psychology, basically. So he's a superstar talker as well. So I'm very looking forward to that. I think we are all going to finish our coffee and then go for a morning stand-up now.
Good, excellent.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And we will speak very soon. Everybody, if you are looking for a top-notch recruitment team, you head to revoco.com.co.uk.
Revoco-talent.co.uk.
Revoco-talent.co.uk. Again, all the links are going to be in the follow-up email that we're going to have soon.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, everyone, and looking forward to see you all in 2 weeks' time. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers, Nick. Bye.
Bye.